This house right here you see is really a beautiful example. It's right in Point Lookout on the beach. This homeowner has got a large solar array. It's probably 25 kilowatts. It's covering 100% of their load and 2 electric vehicles, which is just amazing, right? Because that's the thing, is how beautiful is that? And that works today, right? I mean, that's the Holy Grail, and it's available today. So, mentioned some of these things. What I think is I love these Vision Smart Growth events because you get to really kind of talk to thought leaders and people who, you know, share the vision and want to spread the vision, right? So I want to just share this one component with you right now. I'm reading Jim Collins. He read a book called Good to Great, but his first book was called Built to Last. And that, if you haven't read that one, I highly recommend it. And he talks about one of the most important quantifiable aspects of organizations. Doesn't matter what type of organization. It could be the utility, it could be a state government, it could be a private company. One of the most important attributes is the culture, the purpose, and the vision of that organization. Okay? We're here today at Vision Long Island. Vision has a great vision for a better society, a more healthy population, better downtowns, which lead to all those things. And Power has a vision. We believe clean energy is going to lead to many benefits for society. We embody that vision in a philosophy called the empowering way. And it's all about accelerating and driving renewable energy adoption. We work with a variety of different suppliers. Just quickly to touch on it, we work with Tesla. We represent them for the battery system. And SunPower is one of our primary solar panel suppliers, but not the only one. I want to, for a second, step back to the vision. And I think it's more important than ever. Last night I had the privilege of doing an event with the Long Island Association. Kevin Law hosted, and I was on a panel with President of PSEG Long Island, Dan Eichhorn. And we kind of really got into this in a really, I would say, energetic way. Because maybe you saw the report out last week from all of our governmental agencies. And let's talk about climate change for a second. Fairly clear that there's a crisis. And you have all these governmental organizations. And you know, somebody asked me last night, what's the quick talking point about climate change? How do I convince a skeptic? I said, listen, NASA, the organization just landed this projectile on a dime on Mars. Those brilliant scientists believe there's a really big problem. That's a pretty good talking point, I think. I kind of trust those guys. So the vision is use clean energy to address climate change, but that's not the only problem we have that clean energy addresses. We also have polluted air. We have heavily polluted air in New York. If you look at our air quality standards, and this data is so buried, but it's very clear if you look for it, air quality in New York City and Long Island is terrible. And we often don't meet EPA and Department of Environmental Conservation standards. The third leg of the clean energy vision, so you have climate change, you have general pollution. The third one is energy dependency. Shale fracking is great if it's done responsibly, but we still only cover 50% of our energy needs, and the global market is controlled by OPEC and other sovereign countries, Russia, Venezuela, that don't adhere to the democratic norms and standards. That's a huge problem. Clean energy addresses all of these things. It's a democratization of energy, and it also, the most important thing, this is what I get to and close on. All that doesn't matter. Why? We need to deliver energy cheaper than you currently pay. That's all that matters. People don't buy, the general public doesn't buy. Mike and Trina will tell you, but the people don't buy solar energy because they care about the clean energy vision. This room cares about the clean energy vision, but the marketplace doesn't. But there's really good news there. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the business models, but my final kind of slide on policy issues. I want to talk because I'm very active at the state level on the board of our New York State Association for Solar. That we've never been so active. We've never been this well organized. We have so much work to do, and it's a pivotal moment in history. So we're stepping up. New York State is 11th in the country in solar deployments. Massachusetts is more solar than we do. Jersey has more solar than we do. We're the third biggest economy, third biggest population. We need to be at least number 3 in solar. And there are a whole host of reasons why we are weak, and we need to get a lot stronger and accelerate our efforts. Look, I will tell you, people like Mike Deering, Mike, would you mind raising your hand for a second?
No, it depends on how this goes today.
Well, people like Mike is our champion. I mean, he's the guy who's fighting so hard. He's working with great people at NYSERDA and in the government. This is a complex issue. It's not like you can just say utility, fix it. No, utility is a super complicated infrastructure piece that's got many stakeholders, and you have champions like Mike fighting for us every day, and Tom Falcone, who's speaking later too. And NYSERDA's been fantastic. Now, something I'll give you an action item that I know Mike is working hard on. The rest of the state launched a major battery incentive program. Okay, it includes every other district except for Long Island. We desperately need to get that for commercial and residential on Long Island as soon as possible, and Mike knows that. There are some other high-level issues that I'll just touch on now. Interconnection to the substations is a challenge, and it's only going to get worse as we have higher penetration. Batteries will help mitigate that because you can do low curtailment, you can manage the connection that way. Access to data, another issue Mike knows very well. It's very hard for us to obtain customer data, and I think that instant access for the developer community is a vital point that we're going to work on. Last year, I sat here and I was almost pulling my hair out talking about the change to net metering, which net metering has been around. It's one of the things that helped catapult solar across the country. That's where you get a one-for-one exchange of your solar generation. That was changed at the state, and Long Island resisted adopting it, but it kind of had to. And because the successor program is called VDER, Value of Distributed Energy Resources. It has been applied to the commercial sector, and what it has done is it has placed a varying value of solar exports to the grid, and it has dramatically stalled growth in the commercial sector. A silver lining is that people like Mike, again, helped us save community solar on Long Island. So community solar is a bright spot, and that's where we get to sell energy off-site to subscribers when you put a system on a roof, on a large roof. There's my Darth Vader. I'm not going to go through this long time. So I'm going to go lightning fast now. Resi, so this is the real purpose. And I encourage you to talk to Matt Lane. Matt Lane, raise your hand. He's been with Empower Solar 10 years. Started out installing, did service, now does sales. He's an expert on solar and batteries. He works with NASA Financial, Federal Credit Union. Deb, if you don't mind, just raise your hand real quick. We partner with, this is a huge development for solar. We have a local credit union that's doing amazing work with us. Now we do those loans for the city and Long Island. And it's, like, I think, hands down the best solar loan program that's available, and you have a local branch to go to. For businesses, you have two options. You can do solar and battery. You can reduce your bills. You can own it. You reduce your bills, lower your demand charge. That's a huge aspect of why you want that battery. Also for the grid services, but for the commercial facility, you want to lower your demand charge. And we have great financing available. If you're a building owner, you can do community solar. You can host a power plant. You can sell that energy off-site to subscribers that live in homes that disqualify for solar or apartment buildings. And a lot of times we're funding your roof. And very soon we're going to be announcing a whole slew of these projects that we're working on with Jeff Cohen. So I don't know if I have time for this, but I wanted to get a little bit into the solar battery model. Do I have another minute? Sure. Okay. So here's your baseline building load. When you throw solar on, that's that orange area. It's turning on very early a little bit, and then really your huge production is coming midday, and so your load goes down. That's only when the sun's shining. Now if you look when you're adding a battery, it's kind of hard to tell. I'm just going to go over here real quick. So we're going to constantly be managing these batteries. We're going to set an algorithm, and there's some AI involved with it. But effectively, you want to, when the solar starts to ramp down later in the day, and you have this, the grid is still, generally speaking, the load curves on the grid, that's when air conditioning is ramping in the afternoons, and you want to be able to shed your peak load then. It's advantageous for the grid, it's good for the customer to reduce your demand charge. That's the whole purpose of the battery. So I think, then I just want to show you our final slide here. This is one of our recent community solar projects, Sisters of St. Joseph of Brentwood. It's a 1 megawatt array. I want to point out that Jessica, who's talking in a moment, she was one of the people who helped us you have to be very careful with ground mount systems when you're talking about land use. You can see this sort of ponding area in the middle, right? That was very intentional to have it's sort of a place for the water to help me just funnel. And
It's a stormwater wetland.
a basin or
It's a constructed wetland.
constructed
To
wetland.
collect the stormwater, to retain it on site, to improve infiltration.
Thank you, Jessica.
You're welcome.
So, but this energy is now is sent out to multiple subscribers who, in this case, are on this campus, but could theoretically be anyone who wants to benefit from solar energy. So, there we go. Done.
It's really great. So we are allowing some time for questions. Who's going to help with the switching this around? We want to pull up Sarah's if we could.
Sure.
Q&A now or after?
After I thought. I'm an Apple person, so I always look a little confused when I look at a non-Apple computer. So we've been working with the group Energize New York on a thing called PACE financing, and we're really excited about some progress that we've had very recently. And to tell us all about that is, I'll switch seats with you if you like, Sarah, or yeah, you go. Okay, and Sarah Smiley.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Smiley. I'm Director of Member Services for Energize New York. We're formerly known as the Energy Improvement Corporation. We're a nonprofit local development corporation that facilitates clean energy improvements on buildings for the purpose of reducing wasted energy and increasing the adoption of clean energy across the state. And we do this on behalf of our member municipalities, and that includes cities and counties across the state, as well as towns within Westchester County. And we offer, for commercial properties and nonprofits that want to make upgrades to their buildings to make them more energy efficient, or they want to add solar or other renewables, we offer capital in the form of PACE financing. And we also provide support and guidance through the finance application process. So I'm really here to talk to you about this particular tool that businesses can use to implement the vision that David is talking about of this clean energy future. So PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy, and it's financing specifically for clean energy that is authorized by state legislation that established that clean energy financing is a public benefit that municipalities can offer. And it is repaid through a charge on the property's tax bill. So the financing is attached to the property, so if the property is sold, the financing transfers to the next owner. And that's a unique aspect of this type of financing. And it can cover up to 100% of the cost of the project. So this allows businesses to hold on to other business capital, other lines of credit, and use PACE specifically for making those energy improvements to their buildings. We allow, and we're also looking at the value of the property when we qualify these projects, whether it can carry this extra charge on the bill, and at the project itself, and if it will generate savings. We offer long terms. Our main PACE product, the soundtrack, the main PACE, I'll go into our different products in a moment, but our standard product has terms that go out as long as 20 years. So that's much longer than traditional bank loans. And this allows building owners to do much more extensive improvements, larger projects that have annual payments that are lower generally than the savings they're generating from those improvements. And that facilitates a higher net operating income.
And your last bullet says it's not a loan. So for a business that has, various plans that they want to expand, they want to do things, this doesn't count as debt on their balance sheets.
Right, it's considered an off-balance sheet item. So,
and that seems to be a thing that really motivates a lot of businesses that might have otherwise been hesitant to do this.
yes, absolutely. We can finance improvements in any type of building as long as it's owned by a commercial entity or a not-for-profit. I heard a lot of talk this morning about multifamily development, increasing need for that, so we can do multifamily buildings. And I know we're here, this panel is focused on renewable energy, but I do want to point out we finance energy efficiency as well. So if you really want to make the most of your solar installation, you don't want to be leaking a lot of energy from aging infrastructure of your buildings, so we can help with that aspect of it. And Also want to point out that if you know the lifespan of the mechanicals in your building, you know when they'll need to be replaced. Instead of waiting for an emergency, you can plan ahead and look to upgrade to a renewable option, and you can finance it with PACE. So for energy efficiency, that can be done in the existing buildings, and NYSERDA, which provides the guidelines that oversee our project qualifications. They've also established that gut renovations count for existing buildings as well as additions. So this is really helpful for development projects. If you're looking to renovate a building, you can now prioritize clean energy as part of that development. And renewables, we can finance in new construction as well as existing buildings. I'll also point out for solar that we can finance different types of solar arrangements, whether it's a lease or a power purchase agreement. And also, sorry, I should add community solar now as well. That's a new innovation to the program. So there are 4 pathways to, let's see if I can combine. There are 4 pathways to qualifying a project. As I said, they're guided by NYSERDA's commercial PACE guidelines. You can run through your project through an existing incentive program through NYSERDA or the utility. And that's sort of been our standard way of qualifying projects. But they've added additional pathways that are more streamlined and slightly more efficient in some ways, so that there are different ways of qualifying your project if it doesn't fit into an existing box of an incentive program. You can take a whole building comprehensive approach, and they have a cost-benefit ratio that we're looking at, and that includes benefits such as the energy savings, but also environmental benefits as well in that calculation. Or you can select from pre-qualified measures that have a single measure audit. And that includes solar installations as well. So we do require some sort of energy audit or feasibility study for solar projects. And there are also, they have lists of contractors that are approved to do PACE audits to also help simplify the process of getting these projects done. And I just want to break down the qualified renewable energy systems that NYSERDA has approved for PACE financing. So that includes solar, of course, but it also includes measures such as air source and ground source heat pumps. So
And David, I see energy storage. I know you
energy
always
storage as well.
want to make sure we don't forget about the batteries.
Right, exactly. So we are excited to say that we have 2 PACE products available to our member municipalities. They can offer one or both. One is our standard in-house capital product. So we have a pool of capital available for businesses and nonprofits throughout the community who qualify based on our underwriting criteria. And that the amount of financing is capped at 35% of the value of the property. That's an increase. It used to be 10%, which was very restrictive, so now we're excited to be able to offer a lot more. We're looking at a total loan-to-value ratio of not greater than 90%, so that includes any mortgages on the property, including, and then including the PACE financing in that calculation. And we require lender consent. Our second program is our second product is our open program. So we're bringing in third-party capital providers who will be offering this financing, and this is going to be on a case-by-case basis. So it's not going to be ubiquitously available, but you'd be applying directly to these third-party capital providers. And they also, the bottom 3 items, those are criteria that both products have to qualify under, but other factors will be up to that third-party capital provider. So our standard product, we have loans that go out to 20 years, for example, and we're capped at 35%. Under the open program, it will really be up to the capital provider, the term of the loan, and how much financing they're willing to offer. And as I said, that's on a case-by-case basis. So Suffolk County has an active in-house capital program, and we expect that they'll be moving forward with adding the open program as well. And Nassau County is in process of implementing our open program product. So we're very excited now to be moving toward Long Island-wide products being available. I won't go into detail on these, but I just want to give a few examples of projects that we've done. This is a restaurant in Suffolk County that did a rooftop solar. This is a retail operation in Westchester County, also rooftop solar. This was our first project, which was ground mount solar on a farm in Orange County. And this is not solar, but I just want to highlight the other renewable energy systems that we can finance. They converted from oil-burning boiler to high-efficiency air source heat pump units. So that generated energy savings for them and made the building a lot more comfortable for their guests. And that is it. Thank you so much.
Okay, great stuff. All right, so financing, a new financing tool available in Suffolk County and hopefully soon in Nassau County. We had a public hearing just about a week or so ago. If there's anybody here that knows Nassau County legislators, maybe you can say something positive about it. But it's a bipartisan thing, so hopefully it should get approved and we'll have it as an island-wide tool. So with that said, let's bring up Mike Passantino. I practiced it, but I still blew it, all right. With Trinity Solar. Mike, give us your perspective on what's going on with your efforts with solar and stuff.
Sure. So thank you for the introduction, and thank you to our panel here for hosting us today, and Neil for doing his thing, and obviously Mike Deere, and I think I saw Walter walking in the room from PSE&G as well. And so I'm Mike Passantino. I'm the Vice President of Business Development for Trinity Solar here on Long Island. I was blessed in 2014 to open Trinity Solar. We are the largest privately held solar company in the country. We are the second largest publicly traded company in the country. So for Trinity, we're 1,800 employees across 8 states. We're headquartered out of Wall, New Jersey. 2 brothers own the company. It's a blessed story. They just kept putting money and investing back into their company, and we've grown from Rhode Island down to Maryland. So we're only in the Northeast, and we're the #2 company in the country. So for us, it's more about our company. While guys like David are doing a really great job out there in the community solar world and lobbying for solar, it's imperative. What we see here on Long Island from the jobs that we're doing in the communities that we service is that solar doesn't have a great name on Long Island. In Massachusetts, like you said, we're killing it. In Connecticut, we're killing it. How we market, how we advertise, how we get to our customers is a lot easier in every other state. When we're having a conversation with a customer sitting at the table, Long Islanders are extremely skeptical. I stood up here last year and I spoke about companies that are out there that may not be doing the right thing by solar on Long Island. And that came to fruition this year, as I know everybody in the room, by a show of hands, have seen Newsday or Channel 12 News, right? And you saw all the people complaining about solar and leases and this, that, and the other thing. And thank God our company wasn't on there. I know David's wasn't on there, and there's a few other companies on Long Island that, understand that these companies grew from nothing. They were small little companies that have grown into powerhouses on Long Island that are doing the right thing in the industry. So for Trinity, at us, me especially here on Long Island, I started off by myself. We now have about 138 employees, all local Long Islanders that work here in doing good for local Long Island in solar. Our main objective this year in 2019 is to educate. We have a program educating real estate agents. We believe that within our community, they're the ones that have a direct contact to the client, whether they're buying a home or selling the home. They're going to be the ones that we feel are going to be able to put solar in a bright light and educate them. So at Trinity Solar, we host educational classes bi-weekly and monthly for real estate agents. They earn continuing education credits. They come in, they learn about becoming a solar specialist on Long Island, how to transfer a lease if a house is being sold, talk to customers about the good and the positive of solar, because we all realize that energy rates are going to continue to go up, and as we struggle to reduce those or keep them level, we want to work with our communities and we want to educate them that solar is a good thing. Choosing the right company is a better thing. Knowing who you're doing business with, knowing the business that they've done, doing your research as a consumer is probably the smartest thing that you could do. The product that we offer, whether it's the batteries, generators, or solar in general, is a good thing. Like David said, the government wouldn't be giving us 30% back. New York State wouldn't be giving us taxes. PSE&G wouldn't be doing all that they're doing if they didn't feel like this was a way for Long Islanders to really curb that, that increase in energy. So for Trinity, it's all about educating the public. We're not worried about selling solar here on Long Island. That's not really what drives and motivates us. Maybe what our why is. It's more about our employees and providing the best customer experience we can through the products that we sell and offer. And so for us, we work on our business, we work on our employees, we work on our customer relationships and how we're going to build solar and continue to build our relationships here on Long Island. There's so much business here, and for Trinity, in our 8 states, Long Island is our biggest market. It's also our toughest market. And I know companies like mine and David's and a few others, you know, we're always out there advocating for solar. Not just our own companies, but solar in general. And getting the mindset of the people that are out there that have been tainted by poor salesmen or poor educational purposes, you know, it's a good thing. It really is. And there's a lot of potential on Long Island for solar to continue to grow. I agree. The industry is going to evolve into batteries, into generators. This is part of Trinity's plan in order to offer these products as well. So for us, like I said, it's about empowering our employees, educating them, educating the real estate agents out there, so when they're talking to homeowners, they're in a positive light. They see solar in a positive light. There's not a problem with a transaction if somebody has a lease or somebody owns a system and they go to sell their house. Pick up the phone, give any one of the solar companies here a phone call. They will guide them, the homeowners, through that process. This isn't about really competition. It's more about there's so much business here on Long Island for these companies that are willing to do good. Their companies will grow and do well as a result of that. And so that's our biggest advocate for Long Island, is to show people and teach and educate people that solar really is a good thing. It's more important to choose the company that you do it with, so you get the right product, you get the right service, you get the right experience, and then you can then go out there and be an advocate for solar regardless of who is canvassing your area or advertising. I always tell people all the time, we run up against Empower Solar, we run up against Sun Nation, and our local guys, and it's not about cutting prices, it's about, you know, who that salesman is at that time, the story behind your company, who they want to do business with, making somebody understand that, hey, there are different levels of companies out there, and really the product that they're offering is a great product. So choose who you're going to do business with, and that's really what much of what I have to say today. I'd be more than happy to answer questions along with David and the rest of the panel, you know, when it comes to Q&A time. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mike. Let's go. Okay, so now let's bring up our cleanup hitter. Jessica's going to really help sort of give a big picture to this whole discussion of solar, because that's really what she's working on, this whole concept that she's working on for a Long Island solar roadmap. So Jessica, take it away.
Thank you. Thanks, Neil, and thanks everybody for taking the time to be here today. I'm Jessica Price. I'm a landscape ecologist with the Nature Conservancy, and a lot of my work focuses on renewable energy and climate resilience. And so today I'm really here to talk about a project that we're just getting going about really partnering with all of the actors in the energy space on Long Island to figure out how we can speed up installation of solar energy in places that it makes the most sense for our Long Island communities. So the other panelists, and David especially as our kickoff person, really helped kind of paint the picture of why we're talking about this. And a lot of people ask me, well, you work for a conservation organization that usually owns nature preserves, right? Why do you guys care? And why do we care about renewable energy? But it's because climate change is really the biggest threat that we face as an environmental organization. And in my opinion, as a society, that's my secret green agenda. I think we need to be reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, and tackling climate change is a big challenge. And there's really 4 sources of greenhouse gas emissions. And electricity is the biggest one. Electricity generation is our major source here in New York. And so we have this great goal of 50% of our electricity from renewables by 2030. And as a state, we're at about 28% right now. So we still have a ways to go. As a state, a lot of this comes from hydro. But that picture starts to look a little bit different when we drill down to Long Island in particular, and we start looking at downstate. So I have my notes because I have some numbers and I want to get them right. 88% of the electricity produced using fossil fuels in New York comes from the downstate region. So that includes Long Island, the Hudson Valley, and New York City. So we're a huge source of greenhouse gas emissions from electricity. And while some energy flows from upstate to downstate New York, because of limitations in our grid, it's really hard to get clean energy electrons from upstate to Long Island. It's just as difficult to get an electron from upstate through New York City to Long Island as it is your car during rush hour. So you can think about it like that. And so right now, only about 5% of the energy generated on Long Island is coming from renewables, and that doesn't count the nearly 350 megawatts of behind-the-meter solar that we have installed on our rooftops and in other places on Long Island. But we're really hoping to change that picture. We really have a plan for how to get there, and by we, I mean the folks on the panel who are working on the ground to install more solar out there. LIPA has a plan for how we can get there. So New York State says we need about 17,000 megawatts of additional renewable energy by 2030 to meet our goal, and LIPA is committed to meeting this goal. So this graph shows the energy resources that are planned to come online between 2017 and 2023. And I know this is a lot of information in this graph, but what it really emphasizes is the kind of all of the above approach that we need. We need offshore wind, we need larger scale solar, we need battery storage, we need all of those things. And this is really a time of opportunity for transitioning to renewable energy. So we have a lot of aging fossil fueled electricity generating infrastructure. I have some additional nerdy numbers on those that I'm not going to bore you with, but if you want to know later on what that means, we can think about how we're going to take those resources offline as they're starting to age out and bring on new clean resources. We also have advances in technology. Solar is now cost competitive. We're seeing solar installations and offshore wind be cost competitive for energy generation in just open RFPs, and that's really exciting. We have an accelerating local market, so we know that Long Island is a leader in the state for rooftop solar installations, right? So we're on the right track, and we can really capitalize on that local knowledge, that local economic opportunity to launch us into the future. And there's a lot of economic benefits to this as well. So what exactly are we trying to do? Well, our big picture goal in this project is to advance the pace of installations by reducing conflicts around siting and lowering those other barriers that we know about to installations on low impact, low conflict sites like parking lots, rooftops, previously disturbed areas. Areas that we know make sense to put solar, but right now there are some barriers for getting those installations done. Sometimes they're economic, sometimes they're policy, sometimes they're financing, that kind of thing. Sometimes we just don't know where they are. So we're not really seeking to do this alone. As an environmental organization, we're very aware that all of the work all the change that we would like to see in the world and the changes that are happening in renewable energy especially, they're a big group effort, all right? No one is doing this alone. And so our role is really to bring together the actors in solar siting and policy and generation and development from across Long Island, from across sectors, to really inform the project, to make sure that we're identifying the major barriers, asking the right questions, and answering them with the best available data and processes. So we've gotten together, this is a list of the kind of organizations, and there are some that are missing, so if you're in the room and your organization isn't on here, but you know you've talked to me, I apologize for that. If you'd like your organization to be on here and it's not, call me. I have a whole purse full of cards. But really this shows that we're reaching out to municipalities, the utility, developers, environmental and community organizations, and people from the commerce sector to really get together and develop some shared solutions. So I'm going to skip ahead to tell you what it is, what are our deliverables, what are we hoping this project is going to produce. The first thing, we've had a lot of, and I'm sure again, we're referring to everybody reads Newsday, right? Everybody reads Newsday and is up to date on what's going on. And I'll back up and say one of the motivations for this project is there have been some things like the bad actor story in solar, some siting conflicts around solar that have really started, we were concerned that it was starting to change public opinion and the acceptance of solar on Long Island. We've seen some pretty high profile siting conflicts. And so we wanted to kind of flip the script around that conversation. And instead of focusing on where solar shouldn't go, let's get everybody in the room together and figure out where it's agreeable, where solar should go, and find some solutions and strategies to get it to go there. So the first stage is developing, together with this group of people, not where the Nature Conservancy says solar could go, but really mapping areas of low impact and low conflict that are opportunities for solar development. So we call these like solar opportunity areas. Then we can estimate the economic costs and benefits of installing in these low impact sites. And the third piece is this public opinion research. So we really want to understand and identify the locations, the types of solar infrastructure, the business models, and the messages that Long Islanders perceive most favorably. We want to understand what Long Island communities, what they see as not acceptable, and what are their preferences for renewable energy in their communities, so that projects can be designed to meet those needs. And finally, we want to bring all of this information together so that this group can develop a cohesive set of strategies and actions that can help drive solar development to those low impact sites and remove barriers, lower barriers to those kinds of installations. And so examples of those kinds of recommendations, it's more of a menu. We're envisioning a menu of options that different actors could adopt from their perspective to help move things forward. But it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. So we may have recommendations that fit one context or another better, or that could be adapted. So things like land use regulations and zoning policies, overlay districts, messaging and community outreach strategies, different ways that municipalities or the utility or finance mechanisms could incentivize development in these low impact places. So the door is wide open for these kinds of recommendations, but that at the end of the day, the recommendations and the map of opportunity areas are the really big pieces that we hope to help drive things forward. So I'll back up a little bit and just to show our process diagram, because I'm a scientist and I really like process diagrams. But it really kind of illustrates, we're forming this consortium, so we're getting the working group together. We're collaboratively defining what a low impact site is, and then collaboratively defining our specific economic analysis goals and questions, and our specific social science research questions and methods. Those orange boxes are those 3 work streams that will then come together to this shared solutions at the end. And this is, we have about 18 months to 2 years left on the project. So we're in the stage of starting to collaboratively define and narrow down on our research questions. And so to find out more about this, we do have a snazzy website, www.solarroadmap.org. And so we have some documents that we still need to get up on this, like our project charter and things like that, but it is up to date, and most importantly, has our contact information, a form that you can fill out to get in touch with us. If you are interested in this project in any way, or want to be on the mailing list about results as they come out or anything like that, please don't hesitate to talk to me after this, ask some questions, reach out in whatever way makes sense for you. We would definitely love to hear from you in the room. And finally, I have to give a big thank you. So everyone who's involved in the project so far in the room, I see faces that I know. Would you mind raising your hands? Please. Thank you very much. I would love to give these guys a round of applause because they're really the people, they're the brain trust, part of the brain trust.
So thank you, Jessica. So I think you could see how I felt that Jessica's presentation would sort of pull everything together back into kind of this big picture question of how do we find the best locations for solar in order to drive larger solar development on Long Island in a way that's going to be publicly supported and really achieve our goals. So I rushed some of our speakers through things, particularly David. I might give him a chance to jump in again. But we did that so that we'd have an opportunity for some questions. I do have a few questions on my mind. Show of hands, do we have some people that have questions? I see one in the front, one there, good. Before we do that, however, I'm going to take a liberty to introduce one other idea. So the Sustainability Institute is working on a white paper, and we promised our Clean Energy Leadership Task Force meeting that we would release it on December 14th. We have circulated drafts to people who attend those meetings and some people that are in the energy industry, and we feel very strongly about what this white paper is proposing, which is that the town building codes should be amended to make a requirement that when new commercial development is coming forward, those new buildings should be designed from the beginning and be required to include solar. Best time to put solar on a roof, you can make sure the roof is strong enough, you can move mechanicals out of the way, And from our discussion of financing, new construction, you can finance the solar separately. Did I say that right in terms of the commercial pace? So there's financing tools for it, and in the long run, the business is going to make money on it no matter how you figure it. So it's, no one likes being regulated and being mandated to do things as a general rule, but this is a mandate that doesn't harm in any way the businesses that are going to be required to comply with it. So we believe that codes always are kind of moving up. We were very involved in 2006 writing a similar paper about how we could raise our energy codes for residential, and I'm happy to say that has really been a tremendous success. So we kind of dive into this issue and suggest that the code should be raised for commercial construction so that all new commercial buildings would include solar on the roof. So if you're interested in that topic, I do have a draft of my white paper. I'd love feedback, and I'll keep these up here at the end of the discussion. So with that said, just one or two questions. First, I did ask a question about commercial pace. It can be used for new solar, so that's important to know. David, I think there was a little bit of a sense of, challenge or frustration about the changes in the industry. It does feel like there's been a little bit of a shaking out of the industry on Long Island in terms of maybe there was more companies, maybe there's less now. We all read that Newsday article that said, however, there's real concern that the industry is struggling compared to where it maybe could be. Do you want to come back and comment on that point or that broader question of where you think things are at today, and whether some of these initiatives you're hearing about, commercial pace or a change in codes or just a broader effort to identify the sites that people will support, will all these things work?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, in a broad sense, I mentioned it earlier, we're number 11 in the country in terms of solar deployments. We're behind Massachusetts, we're behind New Jersey. We do have a decent goal of 50% renewable energy by 2030. We're not going nearly fast enough. It's not even close. We need to go much, much faster, okay? And there are a whole suite of things that we have to do to accelerate. Now, you have to balance this with very complex infrastructure, a very challenging job, even before, I was talking about this last night, even before distributed energy generation, and really big concern about environmental externalities. Managing the grid was a complex business. It got that much harder. So we can work very closely with the utilities and with the regulators, but there are a whole host of reasons and ways that we can accelerate. I think that what Jessica is working on is really critical. I think what you're working on is super critical. Code is a hugely important lever we have. My business partner, Greg Sachs, is on the code committee of New York City. And we are right now, we just submitted comments to completely update the New York City Energy Efficiency Code to make solar ready standard and battery ready standard. So that when you design a new home, you have the right allotment. If you have 800 square feet of roof area, you're golden. If you put in the right type of wall system and the right electrical system, you can put in a few batteries. The biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges we probably have is going in and dealing with our existing building stock, which is very challenging. So at least we can get I think that, and with PACE financing, there's a lot of good happening, but there are many challenges, and maybe we'll touch on those later.
Great. So let's take a couple of questions from the audience. This gentleman here, and then I'll go here, and then up. So we got 4 of you. So you front row and in the back.
A couple of questions. One, you mentioned generators. I'm wondering, is there something new or different from the regular concept of a gas generator in the guy's driveway? Number two, net metering, I've lost a little bit of touch on this. That's still for residential. Number three, it seems to me New Jersey was way ahead of us with incentives and ways of doing that a long time ago, and that's why they jumped ahead perhaps. This is pretty much an open question.
So I'll jump in. So regarding generators, it's how we market to our community, right? So generators will fully pull you off the grid if the power goes down. It's just another product that we're going to offer along with battery technology. They go hand in hand. And so no, not something typical that you would see sitting in a driveway, but a small 20 kW or a 10 kW or 15 kW naturally gas aspirated on the side of somebody's house, in addition to battery storage and solar, really gives you the best benefit. And what we're seeing is, with the townships and the municipalities, I'm sure David can speak on this as well, they call us to sit down and say, hey, how do we get more efficient at our permitting process? Because ultimately what happens is, as all companies do, we have to file a permit and we have to move through the system in the permit process. Well, we're overburdening the townships that don't have the ability or the personnel to really file those permits and get them through. So however, when we talk to them and they adopt different ideas that we're giving them into their procedures, we're seeing a very drastic reduce in permit time. So it got to the point where last year, the year before, 2 years, 3 years ago, it was a big issue on Long Island. It's not a big issue right now. If your paperwork is coming in clean, most townships you're getting your installation on the roof in less than 60 days.
So, and David, on the net metering part, it's still in effect for residential?
Just real quick, Mike, I
Yep,
encourage you
no
to
worries.
stay away from the generators, please. Let's be done with fossil fuels. And also, the issue with the generator is, we were now in Park after Sandy, and we lost all fuel sources. The only thing that was working was solar plus battery. So, and the generators are loud, they require so much maintenance, I humbly encourage you. So, net metering. So, rate policy, I'm fairly knowledgeable. I'm not nearly as knowledgeable, of course, as Tom Falcone, CEO of LIPO, who's in the room. And he'll be speaking, I think, the next session. I encourage you to listen to that. It's all about rate design. It's all about market forces and price signals. Right now, our rate design in New York is an anachronism in general. It's prehistoric. I'm sorry, Tom. I think you probably might agree, maybe. Politically, it doesn't mean it's easy to change. I think there are very complex politics involved. What they did with net metering for the commercial sector in New York State is they changed it from net metering to a new rate system called VDER, Value of Distributed Energy Resources. It was a colossal failure. And it was absolutely a poor choice to start with that and not start with overall rate design, okay? And it has dramatically stalled commercial distributed generation solar in this marketplace. That's what the data clearly shows, and throughout the state. We're already behind other states. We already have other headwinds. That was a big problem. Now, it doesn't mean easy to get it right. So what my appeal is to Tom and our leadership is let's look at a dynamic pricing system for the consumption of energy. If you go to California, if you look at their rate structure, even for residential, they have multiple tiers. They have 5 tiers, okay? Energy is dear, expensive in a summer afternoon. We don't have that price signal here. Why? Maybe Tom will answer that later.
Happy to take your question.
But California does. That's why today in California, solar plus battery is an obvious thing to do. It's not even, and you don't need much of an incentive at all. So, and that's a market force, because if you look at the spot prices of electricity, there's a lot of evidence to show that it gets expensive in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So net metering has changed. It has not come to residential yet. It's going to, and that's why there is a parallel process right now for rate design. There's a rate design proceeding for residential only, which I think is a huge mistake. It should be for all rate design. And they want to make it optional only for solar customers, which is another huge disaster. So, Tom, sorry, there's so much work to do. There's just so much work, and frankly, we really need big-time leadership because we're not going nearly fast enough. Sorry.
Let me get a couple more questions in, so the gentleman in the back, and then I'll come over again.
Well, listened to the lecture this morning, and I have a couple comments. One, you already have a building code in place in Appendix U of the state code. At least in new housing, we have to show the solar panels. We have to show at least the location of solar panels. But here's my problem, my complaint. You talk about educating the real estate industry. There's not enough education for the building professional industry, especially design industry. We're not seeing it. And it's very difficult to, we talk about how many solar panels, I get this all the time. Well, how many solar panels I need on a house? Okay, it's the formula, it's basically, it's 1 square foot of solar panel per 5 square foot of house. That's how it breaks down. But if you actually do the math, it's so complex that it doesn't, it doesn't register with people.
But a question.
I'm leading into the second question. If you see a commercial code change where there's a similar context to Appendix Q, where you have to do this under buildings, is there going to be an industry effort to understand a retail store needs this much solar panel to survive, a garden towel use needs this much power to survive, a hospital needs this much power. Because I think the problem that is being, it seems to me anyway, is we're not explaining, and I'm not even explaining myself well enough, quite frankly, is we're not able to explain to the rest of the world as design professionals exactly, if I put in a 3,000 square foot restaurant, how many solar panels do I need? And I don't have that resource easily available.
Can I take you for lunch and we'll talk about it?
I'll tell you what, you want to come to my office, I'll set up a lunch and learn. You
course.
get lunch, I'll get 5 architects in the room. Give us an hour CEO.
I like that solution, that sounds really good. Jessica, you have a thought?
Well, I mean, I would also like to challenge us all to expand. So when people on Long Island, this is my own observation, think about solar, they think about residential rooftop solar, and now we're expanding the conversation to think more about commercial solar. But we still tend to think about producing energy on site for consumption on site. And that's because that's what we're doing, primarily that's what we're doing right now. But we have some really great mechanisms in place, and I think we'll be moving forward to have additional mechanisms that allow us to have community solar. Only about 40% of households nationwide, this is a nationwide statistic, can actually have rooftop solar. So that's leaving 60% of households out in the cold. Commercial spaces, the lifespan of the infrastructure that we already have built is very long. So if your roof wasn't built in 2015 or 2016 or more recently, your roof may not actually support that. So we really need to be thinking about how we can drive it to parking lots, larger commercial spaces. This change for commercial code could be really, really important so that commercial spaces are ready to go. Because for economics and producing on site, it is a question of if a business or a commercial space wants to cancel out all of their consumption from the grid and be independent, that's one thing. But we need to say, okay, how much is the maximum you can produce on that rooftop? How much is the maximum you can produce on that space? And make it a commercially viable option to do that, so that system can support the rest of society as well, so that it can actually feed back onto the grid. That's going to be the key to achieving our 20 by 30 goal. And just as a reminder, that goal actually states 80% by 2050. And so to get there, we need to go beyond producing just what you can consume on site, but producing as much as you can produce on site.
And in terms of numbers, just so I'll put it out there, that the Sustainability Institute's white paper, we're recommending 2 watts per square foot of the building's footprint for the first year, and then it would phase up to 4. So we do put some numbers in our recommendation. We have some things that it's based on, but as Jessica points out, that still would not necessarily satisfy the building's needs, and we really should be talking about going beyond just the building's need. But we see that as a requirement that would be a minimum. So I wanted to give that as an answer since you put some numbers on. Let me get the last 2 folks in because we only have 2 minutes left.
Good morning. A quick question. I hear everyone on the panel speaking about how the technology is improving and changing. And I had a recent conversation with a landlord that their main concern about, one of the 2 main concerns, what applies to this, was that when they put it up, the technology is changing so fast that it'll be outdated. And that was, of the 2, that was the biggest objection. I spend this money, I spend the time, I put this on my roof, and in 5 years it's obsolete.
I have a real good
It's
response.
sort of like that computer
So,
fear.
I
Am I going to buy the old model rather than the new one?
I think that the answer is simple. The smart money has been investing in solar forever. Okay, I'll give you an example. Well, Estee Lauder did a great project with us, and we put in technology there. They've been saving a lot of money for almost 8 years now. And if they were to do it today, maybe they get a slightly bigger system, maybe slightly more savings. But they've already saved a ton of money, and they're a fantastic testimonial. And Estee Lauder is just one of the many Fortune 500 companies. You know, go to Warren Buffett. He's been investing in solar for over 10 years. So I hope that answers it.
So you're saying that the technology today cannot be outdated? That's the concern.
Yeah, I mean, so
it changes in a way that what I have on my roof isn't.
But the truth is, the units that are
yeah, so
10 or 20 years
it will
old are
improve
actually
incrementally.
still.
Absolutely. But that's what I'm trying to demonstrate through an example, that it's only incrementally better.
Right, it's not the dramatic
Power
change
density.
from.
It's incremental.
Right, so it's not obsolete. It may not be as efficient as it will be 5 years from now, but you're never going to say.
There's
well,
no
that's-
analogy to the iPhone kind of stuff where
Well,
there's a
no,
big change every year.
It's not like you're investing in like a laser disc player that is gonna be like no longer used
Right.
in the format in
Right.
10 years. It's just that it will become more efficient, but not installing for that excuse, it's just leaving money on the table.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
No, I agree with you. I
Yeah.
think some people have a concept, not that it's just gonna be less efficient, but they won't be able to use it. It'll
Okay.
become a laser disc.
So we're at 11:10, which is our end time. I try and stay on time. Is there a half a minute question in the back? Go ahead, real quick.
Possibly, Neil, I was going to add on to that question because I see an objection as a former planning commissioner. You and I voted on an ordinance where it's a very affluent town, North Shore, didn't want solar panels on the front of houses.
Right.
Even though that would be the best place to put it. I'm wondering if you're still seeing that and how we can compensate because we should be thinking solar sector.
Yeah, any comments on the aesthetic concern? Are there ways
So
to?
we see,
Thank you, Don, for
more,
your question.
that's a good question, because we see that a lot in more of the villages and,
Right.
and the smaller, they have architectural review boards. So ultimately, that's really what it comes down to, for us. Yeah, I mean, if your front of your house is facing south and that's gonna be your best production, aesthetically, it really comes down, you can give you the salesman's version. Here's the great news, that you don't see it from your kitchen. Or here's the great news, that when you walk out your front door, your neighbor just bought solar and you're gonna be looking at it at their house.
Well, actually, my question is, what are we doing to like offset that? Because it should be sexy, progressive, it should be exciting to have that on your house. 'Cause it should be
Agreed.
that you care.
But it's, to me,
Especially with global warming and everything else we talk about.
but it comes down to personal opinion. Some people like green cars, some people like red cars, some people like Toyota, some people like Mercedes. That's what we're finding at the door. I don't, aesthetically,
And are there some different products that do have different
My
looks?
quick guidance on this is aesthetics are hugely important. We're constantly struggling. We want as much power as possible, but at the same time, it has to look good. And so my guidance today is to make sure that you have contiguous lines. I don't love it when we put panels everywhere. I mean, some people want that though, and so how do you deny them? So it is a tricky issue. I will say, dare I say, there are products, of course, coming out that integrate with the panel and the tile, but the problem with that is, in a cold weather environment, I don't think it's really wise to combine these things until it's tested for a long time. We've got to use what we have today.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you, everybody. If there's any quick comments.